as you can tell by the title, he will win, question mark, or will he win? And I'm going to do a little narrative around that the Lord gave me. But before I get there, I want to kind of get your kind of mindset and heart set in the area to kind of think about what we're going to talk about. And my first question is, how do you feel about the election? Not think about it, not what you logically are deducting, but what are you feeling about it? How's it making you feel? Maybe is a better way to put it. And everybody can just jump in. And I'm always good about picking on somebody and say, would you tell us what you feel?
I think it's making me feel excited. Um, yeah, excited. That's the word that comes to
Okay.
mind.
Somebody else.
I feel like it's super important. This election is more important than anything because the line is it's not hidden anymore. It's very distinct between good and evil. And it makes me, I guess, stronger in a sense to stand for what is right. As a matter of fact, I think I'm more determined now to stand for what is right than I've ever been in my whole life. And this election, I'm counting on God.
So if in a feeling, what I heard someone was that was descriptive decision making. I'm going to stand,
Right.
But apparently you're feeling uh, courage. You're feeling more secure, I guess, to stand. Would that be a?
I would say I'm more secure, but I'm also, I don't even know. I don't know if this is the right word. I feel very desperate that this is important. This election is important. I think
There you
it's a
go.
desperate time, and I feel desperate that I don't want us to lose our country.
So there's a little bit of kind of like in a ball game. It's it's the last minute of the football game, and both teams are tied in one, and you feel a little bit of anxiousness and excitement,
Yes.
all that kind
Yes.
of. Okay,
Yes.
all right,
Absolutely. All of that.
great, thank you. Somebody else.
Well, you said desperate, you said anxious. I'll just throw the word out there. The first thought I have is fearful.
Okay.
And so I know where that, I'm not been given a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and sound mind. So I know where that comes from. So I got to throw it behind me or cast it down and go to the word of God and know that God's going to win. He's going to win in the end. He's already won. He's already won it. We just have to walk this thing out in our own way and be strong in Him and speak Jesus in every situation that we can.
Awesome. By the way, Art is my proctor. He taught me. He was the proctor when I was in taking life skills, and it was particularly designed for men to learn how to express their feelings. So we had to do like a 30-day challenge every day. I had to get up in front of the mirror and say, Bill, how are you feeling? And they even gave us like 50 words to choose from because we're so typically men are terrible about being able to target their feelings. But anyway, that's one of the reasons why I'm asking this today, to be very discerning and discreet or not. The point being is, I don't want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your feelings. Next person, John, I'm going to pick on you, brother.
That's okay, because I was getting ready to come in.
All right.
Concerned. I'm concerned about our Christian values, and I guess that's the overall is for my family, for my kids growing into this next century. Yeah, very concerned, and I'd like to have a list of those 50 feelings if you still have it.
I've got it somewhere in here, but yeah, I'll be glad to do it. And it's important for us. And behind the word, and this is where we typically are, most of us don't have the time or take the time to discern what's quietly underneath in the subconscious. So your concern is kind of a thinking process, like, well, if this happens, this happens. But what's happening in our brains, if we're anxious or worried or fearful, our brain tends to get locked down, and we minimize how some of the choices out there, some of the opportunities get narrowed down because brain can't think quite as well. Ike maybe could speak to that because he's taken some studying or has studied some on the brain. But
yeah, let me just say,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, I take concern because I come from a network engineer background.
Okay.
So I'm taking all the information in. Yeah, I could be over anxious about any given situation in this, but I'm just still sorting it through.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, and it's important. All right, next person wants to.
I'll say that I am optimistically cautious. The reason being is because I know that the enemy is throwing out every stop that they can to try to thwart what God's vision, purpose, and will is for this election. And while there's no question about what it is, what the outcome is that God would prefer to see with this election, I wonder if we as a people are complacently lazy about what part we may have to play in this process. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly realms. And I don't know that the clarion call has been sounded to try to thwart that which the enemy wants to do. God's will isn't going to change. It may get delayed because of our lack of participation in the process that he's outlined for a defined or desired end. So that's where I stand.
So cautiously optimistic. Okay, somebody else.
Optimistic.
Let's see. I can go around the thing here. How about Julia? I caught you chewing. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm frustrated because I think a lot of people are voting on one issue only and not looking at the whole picture. And that really concerns me because the elected officials are dealing with a whole lot of issues, not just one. And I think only one is being pushed. And I think that people need to look at the whole picture. And I don't think a lot of people are. And I think that's going to influence their vote. And that has me frustrated that they're not being well educated.
So frustration and communication. Anybody else? Let's see.
I think I would have to say excited. I have been through so many different emotions, but I settled on the Lord is just really teaching me how to trust him, and that what we see with our natural eyes isn't what he's doing necessarily in the spirit, and to trust that he is bigger than what's going on here, and that he does have an agenda or plan, however you want to say that. And just that he's bigger, and I can trust him.
Amen. I know there's other people that could, talk to me about this. We're going to run into this. I'm sure you already have over this year that it's on the, all I can say, the TV ads are everywhere all the time. It's overwhelming. One person told me it's disorienting. And so one of the things, the reason I asked that again, that feelings are very important at this stage, because what I said earlier is that our brain needs to be engaged, but it needs to be engaged with the heart, and the heart needs to be pure and settled, and it doesn't need to be fearful. So I would encourage you, no matter where you are in this cycle of the election or just the whole feelings around the world, Philippians 4:4-9. You may have other verses like Psalm 91 and so forth, depending on where you are on your fear level or insecurity or frustration or whatever. But my encouragement is in Philippians 4. The Lord taught me this when I started my own business, and I was really anxious and worried about a particular project I was bidding on. I was in the construction industry, and they'd come out of a large construction where I had all the resources. Now it was all on me. And I was just really tense and, anxious. And the Lord got after me about the anxiousness about an hour before I had to turn in the bid, and I had people around me working with me, and I was kind of frustrating them because I was so frustrated. And the Lord just told me it was that I just won't go into the whole details, but just know he was saying, Bill, get a grip. And he showed me Philippians 4. And here's the detail that I took out of Philippians 4, where it says, be anxious for nothing, cast all your cares on him. And it says, if you just take those cares and put them on the altar, is kind of the way I says, okay, I'm worried about the election, or I'm worried, maybe the people in the hurricane right now. It's not that you don't do stuff, but in the mental state, in order to have your mind free to be able to hear God and understand what he's saying and wanting you to do within the context of that fear and anxiety, he says, take that fear and anxiety and put it on him on the altar. Just give him the whole thing. Say, God, this is yours. That doesn't mean you don't do anything, but I'm just saying that that's the first thing it says to do. Cast all your cares on him. Boom. And it says, and the peace of God will reign in your heart. And that's, to me, is ultimate, because once that peace comes into my heart, my antennas go back up. I can hear God more clearly because I have peace. I have rest. I say, okay, God, you got this. You got this. I put it on the altar. I volitionally put it up there. And then what I love, he says, then all you got to do, and I'm paraphrasing, it says, do whatever is right, whatever is holy, whatever is pure, whatever is of a good reputation, some other key things there. And what I love about that, that's my action point. So I go forward with those sort of ethical or moral or whatever you want to call those kind of characteristics of a leader. He then says, and the God of peace will, and here's where I paraphrase it a little bit with a projection, is the God of peace will go before me for those things I put on the altar. When I do my part of just letting peace come and do what he says, righteousness and peace and all that, he'll go before me and resolve that conflict or those problems. Am I making sense? So Philippians 4, to me, is a great antidote for people that are just bogged down, worried, and so forth. Say, God, this is too heavy, it's too big. Boom, put it up there. Again, you listen to God and get your own scriptures and so forth that he wants you to have a key to the lock. But the key is get your heart and mind in alignment back with him. I'm going to move on. I had a couple other questions, but I think you get the point. Let me take you to this question that the Lord asked me, will he win? And as somebody said, hey, that's a great marketing way to get people teased up for this. And it's interesting, in this particular election, there's a man and a woman in the election. So I said, okay, Lord, this is going to be a little bit, for me, I try not to be ultra political, ultra whatever. But let me tell you where this came from, and then I'm going to read from it. Maybe read the whole thing, but I'll read from it. In 2020, I had a dream in July of 2020. And in the dream, it was like, if you ever saw the Batman movie in Gotham, and when Gotham is overtaken by darkness, there was a certain scene where Batman has to go in as I forget what's the name that he had in the natural besides Bruce Wayne. So Bruce Wayne goes to meet this sort of mafia guy underneath the bridge. And it's so dark, and there's just people that have hoods on that kind of look real, kind of mean looking. Well, that was in my dream as I'm going to vote. And I was getting bumped, and I could just tell almost at any point going to vote, I could get killed. And it stunned me. It was pretty dramatic. It was a very short dream, but I got the point. I said, Lord, what's going on? And he said, the election is under attack. And so that night, I went to a rally. A friend of mine had invited me to it. And at the rally, and I'll just go ahead and say it was a Republican rally. and the head of the Republican state guy was there, and I went and shared this dream. And he said, well, you need to go be a poll watcher. And I didn't know what a poll watcher was. So I said, okay, okay, Lord, I'm just following what the Lord told me to do. So I signed up, and the bottom line is I got trained as a pole watcher because I just wanted things to be ethically done right. And I told them to assign me to a place that was, I don't know, very active. put me in the lion's den, basically. Because the local one that I go to, there may be 10 people an hour that go through, and it's just, I can read the newspaper and do the pole watching. So they put me at the State Farm Arena, which here in Atlanta is where the Atlanta Hawks play. It's a stadium. And when I first got there, they took me through security, and they put me up in a room that was just in a conference room, and there were about 20 people in there, had these boxes and these envelopes, and this lady said, "Hey, go stand behind the tables." And I said, okay. And I called her Goldilocks because she had these golden hair highlights and stuff. Anyway, she tells me to go stand by. There was a lady already behind the desk or behind these tables, and she's complaining, saying, I'm a poll watcher to watch those people over there look at the envelopes. And apparently what I realized, I went, oh, this is absentee voting. And when I kind of got a grip with that, I went, well, I'm kind of in the wrong place, but wait a minute, there is something wrong here. Because I'd been trained that you're supposed to be able to watch people vote, not actually at the voting booth, but I watch them come in, give their ID, and I make sure that, that they're doing the right things at the voting place that I was trained to. But upstairs in the absentee, they should be able to sit right at the table and watch them. And this lady wasn't allowed to do it. So I'm realizing the dream is telling me something. And so I got in and I said, wait a minute, ma'am, Goldilocks, this is not right either. And I debated with her along with the lady next to me. I just share that God led me into that, and it made me aware. And then, so a couple of days later, I reported that to the people at the GOP level. And I said, there's something wrong here. And some of anyway, in Georgia, we found out later that they had videos of that room with Goldilocks, and later that night they were pulling out extra ballots from underneath and putting them through the machine. They would get them out of the machine, put it back in the machine, pull it back out, put it back in. And so there was just something going wrong there. And again, I'm not saying Republican or Democrat. My guess is over the years, whoever was in control knew how to do that. And that's why this election thing's so hard. I'm not trying to get you into the weeds of the technology of this, more than to say God brought me into that and I was playing my part. So there's another part here to say, do your part in this election. If you're anxious, worried, ask God, where's my place? What do you want me to do? And I would encourage you not to worry about, at this point, which side of the fence you're on, because God will show you what's right if you ask him. Lord, show me the truth behind this. So I share that story to say how God's involved me into this past election. I've asked him, Lord, what do you want me to do this time? And for me, for some reason, it's more on the spiritual level of praying over and being a part of certain networks that are going around that are praying intensely, but also to connect with people about the truth of what's going on in the communication value. That's me, as I'm asking the Lord what to do. So let me now take you back what I think God is saying, which comes back to, will he win? In the big, broad view that the Lord has been talking to me for now 9 years, I realize. In 2015, he told me that there was a revolutionary revival coming to America. And it's taken me over these 9 years. Each year I rewrite that revolutionary revival theme. But I'll read you just a little bit out of what it was about. It says, we are currently facing a period of significant challenge. This is started in 2015, and I, again, edited every year to just kind of update it in thinking. We are currently facing a period of significant challenges and uncertainty that has affected the entire world. This is in 2015. Cultures and nations are experiencing internal and external conflicts, leading to fear and apprehension. Even at the present, the sense of instability, fear, and uncertainty persists. We are asking, who can we trust and who is telling the truth about the issues? It's important to acknowledge that these circumstances are not entirely unprecedented. Throughout history, there has been similar moments of turmoil and upheaval. One such instance in America occurred 2 centuries ago when the 13 colonies would eventually become the United States of America were grappling with internal pressures and conflicts. The historical period mirrored the challenges we face today. During that time, this is key, the 2 contrasting worldviews clashed, forcing individuals to make pivotal decisions that would shape the lives and the future for generations to come. One perspective advocated for adherence to human traditions and beliefs, paying lip service to God, but lacking a genuine connection to the divine. This is, if just to clarify there, that's the nation of England and the King of England. And the King of England had already orchestrated that he would have the Church of England under his authority. And that's where the 13 colonies were finding it very, very hard to be themselves under God in the colonies, and they began to resist that. But also there were things like taxation, like we know in the Boston Tea Party and so forth. There were a lot of things that were happening during that time, but England was the kind of king on the hill when it came to a country. In contrast, the leaders of the colonies held a radically different worldview, one centered around God. They sought the freedoms to worship God in their own way, rejecting the traditions of man and legalism that constrained them. This revolutionary revival aimed to embrace a life of freedom with God as the focal point. Now, I share that there are other things. This article that I wrote then, or out of my journal, gets to a place of just saying, which side are you going to serve in that regard? Are you going to serve God and what he says and his moral and his ethics? Or are you going to serve the culture and be aligned with it? And right now we're seeing all kinds of things out there, and we can go into issue by issue if you want to. But I just encourage you, if you get before God and ask him, you're going to find the right way. And I trust you for that. Let me shift over now. That again, that's where my world has come from 2015. In 2019, he began to tell me that the dark clouds of his presence with a gold lining were coming on the earth. Well, now I see that more and more. In 2020, when he asked me to release it in January 2020, and I can send this to you if you want. I think it was on January the 4th when he said, okay, go ahead and release this. I didn't know what the dark clouds were. I didn't know what the gold lining was. But the dark clouds at that time began to manifest. All of a sudden, COVID, by the end of January, became a real thing. The media was on it. The Congress was starting to talk about it. And as you know, by March, we as a country were shut down, and dark clouds loomed big time because nobody knew, was this thing going to wipe the humanity off the earth? Was it going to be so lethal? Was it, what was it going to be? And then we had the George Floyd thing, which wrecked the country, that just, for whatever reason, that just lit up a lot of people, and a lot of cities were destroyed and hurt. And again, I'm just saying, these are dark clouds, and how we react to that is very important. And so where's the gold lining in this? Well, at first I thought in 2020, I thought, okay, we're maybe over that season. Maybe by the time the election, that the dark clouds will go away and the gold linings will appear and everybody will be happy again and we'll go back to normal. And then I was reflecting on the letter in the Hebrew, when we were in 2020, it was in the year 5780 in the Hebrew. And the Hebrew, the number 80 is the letter pay. If you understand Hebrew, I took Hebrew for a year or two. And the letter pay represents the number 80. So the whole decade is the letter pay, which can be translated the voice. And I started realizing that God wanted his children to have a voice. And he was going to do things like bring dark clouds to help us learn where to stand. And so I realized, oh my gosh, from 2020 to 2030, the body of Christ is going to go through some growing pains, but it'll have a gold lining if we stand. And so it's a hard thing to present to people, but it's also like, I was talking to my wife earlier today about raising a family is a very good way to be a leader in today's culture, because you learn how to draw boundaries because you love your kids. But if they're constantly, say, throwing mud against the wall, and you go, oh, they're so sweet and they're kind, they just don't know, and they keep throwing mud against it, all of a sudden they get their neighbors to start doing it, and you go, it's wrecking my house. And you realize that's not good behavior. So as a parent, you hate being the bad guy, but you go, in our house, in this state, in this city, in this whatever, we can't tolerate this anymore. Somebody's going to have to step up. And that's where this goal lining is. I'm seeing a lot of people who have tried to stay on the sidelines from a Christian standpoint, beginning to say, what you're doing is wrong and we need you to change. And that's a hard place to get. It's hard as a parent to do it. So let me bring you into the context when this was happening in 2020 during the election. I'm going to just read and then I'll stop with this, because I think you've got the point where I'm coming from, is that I just want you to hear from God, and I want you to, any anxiety, fear, doubt, unbelief, put it on the altar, but say, Father, you are God and you are creator, and we want you back, not only king of my life and king of my family, but I want you to be king, just like in the colony during the right before the Civil or the Revolutionary War broke out, when they were pushing back against the king. And you can read the Bill of Rights. They listed out all the things the king was doing wrong. Was he an evil person? Did they want to kill him? Did they want to, maybe some people did, but basically just saying, hey, you're going down the wrong path here, king. We're born, we're part of your inheritance. What are you doing? And so they finally had to say enough is enough. And so, excuse me. So in the election in 2020, and having been kind of brought in with that election problem that I saw, and kind of involved in prayer and working, one of my friends who he'd been to my house 2 or 3 times, was overseeing all the elections in the state of Georgia. And I knew there was things going wrong, and yet he'd come out on TV saying it was a perfect election. And I just wrote him for his birthday, which was later that month in November. And I said, brother, just do the right thing. Oops. Did I just go off? Oh, well, there you go. Sorry. Somebody's clicking in. I saw my screen go blank. It was somebody trying to get in. And so I'm just telling you, at different levels, I've had to have a strong place of just saying, Lord, just show me what to do. Show me what to say. Because some of these friends that I know are doing things wrong. And I just, push back. Republican or Democrat, I've been very vocal to say, you need to get a life. Because the one I know, he's up there watching. He may not judge you today. And I say this, I bring my own self. I don't do it necessarily every day, but most every day I say, Lord, bring me before your judgment seat, because I don't want to be judged by man. They're sometimes too ruthless. I'd rather be judged by you. And so that's where you get your heart back with God, to say he is the ultimate. And I've got people telling me about artificial intelligence and demons. I've got people talking to me about aliens. They'd rather have something else govern them than God. And I go, I wouldn't go there. He's the creator God. So let me read to you to finish up here on will he win, because that's what brought some of you here today. And if you can just get in the context, if you can put yourself in this place, because again, I'm just trying to do what the Lord's telling me to do. Do I do it right all the time? Do I hear it 100%? But I think you'll get the point, the way that I felt like the Lord laid it out to me. And I've tried to give it to you just like I got it. I was awakened last night, and I put in parentheses, morning of November 9th. Again, this is 2020, with the thought and question, will he win? And when I woke up, it was like somebody had shouted it into my room. From there, I heard the next question, who will win? Then I heard a song by Zach Williams in my head. There was Jesus. It was a country song. Some of you may not listen to country music, but it's a country song with Dolly Parton, and it's really, and it says, "There was Jesus," and the song keeps going through that different trials and situations, but then they realize Jesus was in the midst of it. So I'm realizing in those three little quick questions or thoughts, God's leading me to the answer. Will he win? And my thinking was at that point, oh, will Donald Trump win? No, don't worry about that. Who will win? Get your mind in the right area. And then the song, There Was Jesus. These thoughts took me to the idea of what most people are now wondering. Again, this is 2020, but I think is applicable today concerning the 2020 election. Who is going to win this election? As a matter of note, on November 4th, I was praying and asking the Father what he is doing in this election season. I'd encourage you to do the same. Here's what he told me there, and I was stunned when I read it this week. And I'll tell you where I was stunned, but let me read it here. It says, what the Father told me that he is holding things in suspension so that everyone and everything can be identified. Now, again, back then, that's when the elections were being contended in 2020, and they were starting to count the votes. And some states like Arizona was saying, hey, wait a minute, there's some problems here. In Georgia, as I said, there were problems. And so things were getting sorted out. And I thought, okay, he's suspending time, kind of like time out on a football field. The teams go to the different sides, and it's just going to be a few days, few weeks. In other words, this time of suspension, time is suspended so that the truth in people's hearts can be identified. That's direct from the Father. He is doing this to get people's hearts identified, what's going on in their hearts. From the thoughts from last night and this time of suspension, I believe that this suspension of time after the election is for God's children to make a final decision. Who will win in their life? From that decision, the decision for our country will be established. This is the revolutionary time of revival. Will you choose righteously? During this time of suspension, God is allowing everyone to be identified, that's capital letters, as to what they believe and who they believe in. See, if we're trusting in man, you're going to be anxious. And we hear this, but the reality is we do have to trust people. My wife had to trust me to make money to bring home, but sometimes I failed at that. I didn't bring all the money that we needed. So what do? Can she trust me? Does she try to kill me? What is, and some people get divorced over that. You have to decide who you're going to trust. So during this time of suspension, God is allowing everyone to be identified as to what they believe and who they believe in. Is a time of what people have desired. Many people want righteous judgment. The view God has of righteous judgment is not who was right and who was wrong, but who is aligned with God. He reigns and he rules, and his rules are righteous, by which, and he uses those rules to judge the earth and those in it. 10 Commandments is a good example. So what is God? So God is asking, who will win? What is your answer? Our heart is going to show you the answer. Jesus said that out of the heart flows the issues of life, both good and evil. Luke 6:47 says, and this is in the New Living Translation, a good person produces good things from a treasury of a good heart, and the evil produces evil things from the treasure of an evil heart. What you say flows from what's in your heart. Those who are bitter of soul and angry of circumstances are displaying and manifesting those behaviors associated with anger and bitterness. These behaviors are contrary to God's righteousness, as shown in the book of Proverbs and in the Sermon on the Mount. God has a righteous perspective to judge and to view our behaviors and actions. Those who are motivated and directed by thoughts of emotions, and this is a kind of a weird word, I don't know where I got it from this when I wrote this, impiety, and it may have been a synonym or something that I looked up, but impiety are prone to violence, hate, disruption, and hurtful ways. The book of Proverbs calls such people fools and aligned with the wicked. Those are God's terms, not mine, meaning being fool and wicked. I rarely call people that. Psalm 53:1 says, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. And I would encourage you, when you're listening to people talk today, you will hear in their conversation, if they talk about God, but there are a lot of them that are just taking God out of their platform, out of their thought process. And you can see it visually now. A lot of them are very, very vocal about it. And I would just be concerned for them and pray for them, because that's part of the dark clouds. Will we choose God in righteousness, or will we choose unrighteousness, impiety, and foolish behavior? Remember, God is judge of all. He must judge that which is foolish, impiety, and foul. And in doing so, will bring forth the appropriate consequences to such behavior. Many of us are looking for that we see things wrong. Will they bring that, what do you call it? The consequences to bear. And again, it's just like with me with my children. When my other 3 children saw one of my kids, and I go, well, just be patient. He's just doing this, throwing the mud against the wall. And the other 3 saying, we're not doing that. And at some point I have to be the dad and say, he is doing wrong. And I just can't just give in to him just because he's my son. And, there's some point I've just got to decide, no. I've got to be even if I'm called the bad guy, which I was a lot of times as a dad. So there's a place for that. So this goes on to, and I'll end with this. In Proverbs 29 sums up the thoughts and consequences of the 2 approaches of living righteous versus unrighteous. In Proverbs 29, sorry about that. Proverbs 29 verse 2 says, when the godly are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked are in power, they groan. Verse 4 says, a just king gives stability to a nation, but one who demands bribes destroys it. So who do you want to win this election? I would submit to you that those who choose God as Father will win. If Father God is not in your thinking or emotions, you may find yourself aligned in the wrong forces of the earth that is bringing forth destruction, chaos, and impiety. Now is your moment of decision. So I don't mean to make this a heavy conversation, but as some of you said, you feel that this election cycle, this time period that we're living in, these dark clouds, as I would call them, are intended by God to demonstrate that suspension of time. That's what I realized in reading this week. I first was thinking of suspending the time in November of 2020, but I think he's suspended time to give us time to continue to say, God, I love you. I apologize. Forgive me for things I've had wrong thoughts about this person. I thought they were good. Now I see they're not, or I thought they were bad, but now I'm just seeing the light. It's about us. As we get more right, I guarantee you that God will begin to move other people around you and things will begin to shift. And so he's just wanting his family back. So I'm right at the 1:30 time period. I'll end it right here just saying, will he win? And my question in a more direct way, will he win your heart? And I don't doubt it for the people on this call that you're there. This message is more for you to go out with confidence to continue to share. And I forgot to share this earlier. In 2016, when I was frustrated with both candidates, I said, Lord, I don't know what to do, but I know you want, what do you want me to do? And so I watched the debate that night, the last one, and I just couldn't take but about 15 minutes of it. And I just walked out. And I said, Lord, what do you want me to do? What is it you want me to do? And I was willing to do whatever. And he said, Bill, I just want you to lift my son up. He said, if you lift my son up, then I will draw all people to myself. And over the next 3 weeks, I wasn't avoiding issue conversation. I wasn't avoiding the conversations around candidates and so forth. But I would just say, I would ask the Lord in the conversation, what do you want me to say? What do you see in that person? What are they really asking? And I led 2 people to Christ during that time. I'm not a real evangelist kind of guy, but I'm telling you, it freed me up to go, he's got the election. He's going to do what he's going to do. I'm beginning to look now saying, I think there's a reason why God allowed us to have the administration we've got in now. It's exposing so much. Even my brother talking about they've held back this information on aliens, you know, and I'm going, I agree. The government's doing all these hanky panky things for years, not just in this administration, but everything is starting to explode and be, and so this time of suspension in my own life, there are things he's allowed me to see that I wish I'd have known 30 years ago. There's a time of revival, this revolutionary revival. So I was going to encourage you. That night, it freed me up when I just said, Father, you show me in the midst of this, all this chaos. And that was in 2016. And I would encourage you, same thing applies today. Just ask him, Father, how do you want me to walk in this time? I want you to win in this election. And you got it. So I'll stop the recording here. If I can find where there it is.